September 17th, Police Service Board meeting to order, please. And just make sure we've got the right agenda here. So, do I have a confirmation of the agenda? Rick moves that, Kathy seconds. All those in favor? Carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interests? Regards to the agenda. None noted. So we have the minutes for the June 18th Police Services Board meeting. That was our last meeting. This is the first meeting back after the summer break. So is there a board member that would wish to move those minutes? Rick will move them. Do I have a seconder? Jim will second. Is there any questions or clarification on those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of those minutes? Carried. Okay, delegations, none. Business arising. The only business arising, and I did confirm with Carson that it sounds like Owen Sound has now, after some poking and prodding from the Owen Sound Police Services Board, they are finally going to send the final bill for the calls up till December the 31st for that contract for dispatch. There has been no response from either the chief or the board chair from my emails, so I've asked staff to kind of try to call somebody and see if they were wanting to do something or not do something, and it sounds like next month we'll get a final bill, which hopefully will stop that end discussion. So we've got 7.1, so we've got the detachment commander's report. So I'll turn it over to Dave Cinco to kind of introduce our new interim detachment commander as Wendy has been reassigned. So David, thank you.
That's correct. Acting Inspector Wendy Burrow, after 6 months with us, returned to her position at West Region Headquarters, and Inspector Rob Scott, a confirmed inspector, was lucky enough to join us in Huron County. He'll be covering both Huron and Perth. So he'll be the inspector in charge of both detachments, and myself will remain here as the operations manager, and Steph Pilon will be the staff sergeant operations manager on the Perth County side. So we are two separate entities at this point, however we are under the inspector's umbrella.
So just a bit of background, 29 years of policing. I started Norfolk Detachment, was a crime unit, in a provincial drug unit. I was a sergeant in both Oxford and Brant counties in my career. Operations manager back in Norfolk Detachment. I've considerable incident command and major event planning, Friday the 13th, that I've chaired that for several years. I'm a public order commander as well as a critical incident commander. So, and I've been a detachment commander for 3.5 years, or over 3 years now in Perth County. I went through the dissolution process in Perth, as you're probably familiar with Stratford and with St. Mary's and Perth South. I think we left that in a very good professional way through the transition there with those communities. Politics is politics, as you very well know here as we move to this chapter. The reason I'm here is that, as we're all familiar with the budgetary cuts that the provincial government's been making, it certainly impacted the Ontario Provincial Police. As a result, the upper command, took stock and was evaluating all their detachments and the structures and the sizes and various things. And so, realistically, as part of that, it's well known that we have to carry some vacancies as a result just because of the budgetary cuts. That impacts certainly the upper command level as well. It's really a financial piece to that, not so much bodies. So when you kind of take an inspector into the mix and right size it to a detachment, The hope is that it keeps officers on the ground. So, when you look at what my oversight is, it's comparable, to Wellington, Lambton, Middlesex, so it's not out of the realm of what we're doing here with the inspector and 2 staff sergeants. For me, it's keeping it straight in my head, but I've got 2 excellent staff sergeants in Dave and that. And so, my thing moving forward, I've been realistically, you're doing this, and I don't know where it goes from here. So, I'm here, I'll be making decisions as if it's my job to own, and, because I am a confirmed inspector. And, as such, I certainly wanna work with all my municipalities, including yourself, to see, I know it's new here, so, you know, my biggest focus is, I know there was a few, bumps with this report. My apologies, because the way we report also is pretty much with billable costs, but I understand there's an hourly component that you wanted to see here that I wasn't familiar with, because that's really not the norm at this time. So, I wanna work through that with you collectively to see what it is your expectations are. You know, every municipality is a little different, but most are the same. So, what's important to you? I can tell you that in my career, starting back in the 90s, I've been on the side where, you know, certainly the OPP, a very similar thing with the regional police as a constable, amalgamations. I've worked with officers that have been through amalgamations from municipal agencies like this one across, right up to the point where it changed in Perth County and went opposite. So I'm very in tune to this. You know, I'm here for the municipalities and trying to, you know, make sure we work collaboratively together. We gotta work together to get this job done. It's not an easy process. And, we've got a lot of great things that we're working on, that are kind of gonna transcend the word anyway, but it's kind of easier, in relation to mental health, some things that we're working on with the mobile crisis response. And I know there's a separate one up here, which is awesome. So I'm all for, you know, open ideas, new ideas, and any suggestions, and if we can work to do it within all our budgetary and parameters and personnel, then we'll move forward. So please feel free to ask, and I'll try my best. That's all I can do.
And I think that's all anybody can ask, is that we're all making sure that all lines of communication are open, and make
Yeah.
sure that we're doing our job as board members to ensure that the contract's being suffice, and that the you know, that the taxpayer at the end of the day is, the Wingham Ward is being justified with what the transition was, because that's what was sold to the taxpayer as well as the town council. So
Yep.
it's just a matter of that. So is there, so I'll let you, David or Rob, go through the
I'm gonna
report.
let David
Yeah,
defer to
and that's
Dave
fine,
here, and-
and that's fine. Just to kind of go on top of Inspector Scott's conversation about hours. So I just had sent, when we got the report, I reviewed the report, and then I didn't see the discussion that we have had in the past 2 or 3 months as it relates to hours that had been documented in the actual contract that we were specified to have a certain number of hours. So I had just knowing full well, probably the question was going to be asked again, where we were at, I asked David and Rob to kind of provide that. At the end of the day, if that's something that the board isn't necessarily interested in anymore, based on the discussion that Rob has provided, as well as David, as relates to the contract, and ins and outs of the contract, feel free to change that. I just knew the questions that we were asking going forward, and if I figured if it wasn't there, we would get, the question get asked why it wasn't there this time, and I suspect that.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, moving forward, in the way the new buildings, that's the former building structure, because it's based on your positions, your FTEs, your hours, and all intertwined, and we used to report on hours to municipalities, and then when we didn't meet that, then we'd have to explain, okay, well, officers were deferred because there was a homicide, because there was this and that, and really honest process. And under the new billing model, it's basically based on billable calls for service. So at the end of the year, you'll receive a bill based on the billable calls for service. Now, normally. I can't speak for the minutia of this, and I'm gonna inquire with the municipal policing bureau to make sure I'm on track and not misinforming you. And we've included that billable calls for service, so the way that works, and if this is something you're familiar with, I'll hold off, but realistically, the way that that works is that if you have, say, an assault investigation, that's allotted, say, an hour. And that's based on the provincial average of every municipality that's under contract with the, that receive a bill through the OVP. So that's averaged out across the province. So realistically, if one municipality doesn't care, in the province, doesn't care about thefts and are taking an active role, every municipality that's trying to do education and engagement across the province, we're all gonna pay because of that. Now, most municipalities are all engaged and they wanna do what's good for the municipality. So, and then there's a good portion of that billable calls that you don't get because it's a provincial, it's paid from a provincial standpoint. So if our emergency response unit, our true team, or tactical comes into town, you don't get a bill, it'll be the initial call that there's a barricaded person, right? So there may be $150,000 in assets sitting there, but you're not gonna get a bill for $150,000. So that's kind of it in a very clean nutshell. There's a little more to the minutia, and if you want more information, like I'm sure you've had it extensively through the billing contract, through the contractual process. But if there's anything that you need, one, I can try and explain it a little better myself with some more literature, or I can have somebody from Municipal Policing Bureau come down, but we probably had that significantly over time. So,
Yeah, the municipality has had an exclusive discussion about billable, like what the municipality is going to be looking at in a 4-year time frame when that new billing model comes into effect.
correct.
What we're established is what we're being charged today based on our contract and and the concern from the board has been, the contract states a number of hours based on full-time equivalent, based on, here's the number. So in order for us to, the intention is for us to ensure that the municipality is getting for what they're paying for within that contract, especially because this particular ward in this whole North Huron municipality is getting costed at that one ward. They're required to then look at, and we're trying to justify to make sure that what we're getting as a service is exactly what we signed up for, because that is, on all honestly, our responsibility as a police services board to ensure that the contract is met and we're not being undercharged or overcharged regarding the costing, because we're gonna be paying that cost for the next 3 years. No questions about it. So we just have to make sure that we understand the cost going into that contract, because at the end of the day, at the end of the year, when our budget comes in and it's either over or under, the taxpayer could come to us and say, well, why is it over and why is it under? And we need to be able to respond to that. And we need to respond to it not only at the end of the year, but as we're going on, and we know that, come December, we're gonna be relatively close, or we're not, and we just need to understand that. So I think from that perspective, we understand your position as new coming in. It's just making sure that the questions that we were starting down the path, we're not skewing them somewhere else, because the people who do happen to listen to the questions and stuff, that we don't want to all of a sudden start to talk about costs, and then always, for the last 3 or 4 months, we've been talking about hours that have to be related to cost at some point or another. So I think we're going to grow as with you as the more months go on here, and the fact that it technically is really a nice break. The fact that now we haven't had a meeting in 2 or 3 months, you're coming right in after our break. So it's kind of one of the things where I find it to be nice that now we're going to have consistent meeting once a month, and now we can both get familiar, and the board can get familiar with the information and re-educate themselves, and feel free, if the board has questions of us or me, that we can make sure we can pass them on to David or Rob or both to get any information that we need for the board.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it'll be so much, the way it is it so much cost per property, per household, and then your billable calls for service on top. So So it could be, I don't know what the numbers are here, but I suspect it's probably around the high threes, mid threes, somewhere in their property. I don't know the numbers, so I'm not gonna say it, but it's probably around there. That's usually what most are. And then your billable calls for service. So if we have a crime spree, those billable calls will probably go up. However, if we have a lot of proactive work, those calls could go up. So you're paying for either crime that's going on or proactive effort, and hopefully it's a balance, right? So that's really how it sort of transcends itself. But at first, absolutely, until we get to that. The other thing too is, it'll be very, and we can probably come up with some other solutions to kind of show you what type of things that you're getting. Like, okay, it's great to have these hours, but what do they represent? Because we have no data, right? And as we move forward, I'm a believer in trends. So until we get to that 4-year mark, it'll be tough because we don't have any previous records that we can tap into to say that here's the trends moving forward. So the trends, like, is property crime going up, is it going down, is it level, right? Is mental health up, is it down, is it level? Not just we have a high month or a low month. So I think when you look to trends moving forward, that'll be a good indication of kind of your community health, so to speak, from a public safety. So I'll leave it at that, and it's been a long day, so.
So, right off the start, I'll note a couple of things that you might have noticed as changes to this report from the previous that Wendy presented to you. Right off the hop, this report is combining 3 months together, so it wouldn't be 3 individual reports. So that starts with that. The next thing, and I'm sure Wendy probably discussed this with you, when you look at and I'll go through these in detail, but the first report where you're looking at violent crime, property crime, drug crime, you're looking at year-over-year comparisons. This is an automatic, auto-populated document, so obviously the 2018 figures and then all the numbers on the right are skewed for your percentage of change. So please take that for what it is, simply the numbers year-to-date and per the months of the report. The traffic statistics, I've gone to a format which is a standardized, which we put in our other PSB reports. So we show again year-over-year and the change. I just wanted to give you a report that's fulsome and reflects what an actual report is that I fill out, say for South Huron or for Goderich. That's the standard. So again, stats, you'll see some numbers that are plugged in there, and those will be the numbers that our members did within Wingham proper prior to the transition. So again, the numbers, the percentage of change may look skewed, and they are. And then the only other thing that is different is, and I don't think this was available last time, but if you go to the last set of stats on the last pages here, it's the calls for service billing summary report, so the CFS report. And as Inspector Scott said, this is the standardized report that goes out to the other police services board that are on the contract based on weighted hours. So that's what they're getting, and this is showing what the numbers are reflecting as compared to simply saying, this is your occurrence count and these are your contracted hours.
But this isn't all encompassing of everything that an officer will do in your town. It's
No.
only what they've designated to be your billable calls for service. So it's not a trend, because often if the system, it's like any database, right? If this lag's behind when we print it, it could be out of date by the time we print it. So this is just a general overview, so that by the time you get to year's end and the bill comes in, this will give you a general idea of kind of the billable calls for service that you can anticipate will be billed to the municipality in addition to the property per household, that type of thing. So that's just kind of a general overview, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense to, it makes sense to me, being this, because the actual municipal councilors get this report, because it's sent to the CAOs as well. So we as councilors get them. The board may or may not have seen this before, the
Sure.
other board members, but I know me and Rick, I'm not speaking for you, but I'm sure you've seen this, Rick, before. As councilors, we do get this report. Because we have the municipality has a contract in Blythe and East Walnut for OPP under section, section 5,
Yes.
and then we have one in here. We get this, we were getting this report already.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, okay,
And all
my
encompassing.
apologies if I've gone down a path.
But when you're talking that the Police Services Board would not have seen this report
Right.
before previously.
That's right.
That's correct.
So, and again, sorry if I'm duplicating anything, but just a little bit of information on how the report looks now and how I expect to produce it going forward. So this is the package you would see. Now, Mr. Chair, there was the question about the contract hours and the occurrence count as Wendy had provided previously. So I put together a little chart. I pulled the numbers and I can provide those to you today as well.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I'll simply probably add this as an appendix to the back of the regular report,
Okay.
and then you can see a running total.
Yep.
Then you can refer to that as well, if that's agreeable. Yeah, so, you know, I'm sorry, there's only 2 copies there, but if you want to take a look and you can pass that around, and you'll know what I'm speaking about when we talk about that. And basically what I've done is I've just extended from what Wendy provided to you in the last report through to May, and I've added June, July, and August with the breakdown individually there for your hours, so you can see that as well.
Yeah, and I know Wendy's conversation, or at least the comment from Wendy was the last time was, because we were seeing a trend of hours going down versus leveling off. And
Exactly.
the concern was, well, by the time we get to the contract, if the trend is gonna stay the same, are we paying for full-time equivalent hours that we're not actually getting full-time equivalent hours in the municipality? So the concern from Wendy's perspective was, you know, it's based on reporting, and it's based on reporting from the officers. So there was going to be some dialogue, from what I was under the impression, there would be dialogue back to ensure that those daily reports that are being done were being done accurately, so that these reports would show more accurate figures as it relates to hours.
And I think if you look at them, you'll see those hours have gone back in the other direction.
Yeah.
So, and you're absolutely right, it's all about how much accuracy goes in at the ground level to see what you can pull out from it. But as Inspector Scott said as well, some of these reports do have a lag time, depending on how they come through the system as well. So, what I like to do is, you know, we have the meeting, today's the 17th. If I was to run this report on the 1st, it may not be the same as if I ran it on the 10th, but things obviously fluctuate that way. But anyways, I'll get to the meat and potatoes of the report itself. And at any point, if you have any questions, please, by all means, just let me know, and I can expand on it. So basically, the columns on the left in each section are your June to August. Obviously, you have your 2018, 2019, a percentage change, but I'll just simply reflect on the 2019. It is a breakdown between violent crime, property crime, drug crime. You'll see the numbers, they're not that great. There's 6 assaults noted over the course of 3 months. One what is classified as an abduction. That was the report where there was individuals speaking to the children at the side of the road. Now, you've probably heard on the news, West Perth just had one. We had one just outside of Seaforth. So we take that very seriously. Obviously, the information goes out to the public. The one thing that we have there is sometimes for us, sometimes against us is social media. Some people like to put out facts that they think are facts that causes sometimes a stir before it's actual facts. So we like to get out there and speak to everybody before we get to the point of a media release that's inaccurate. So moving further down into property crimes, you can see your break-in enters, theft over, theft under is your highest right there at 9 over the course of those 3 months for a total of 27. No drug crime throughout the course of those 3 months. And again, things get reported after the fact. Some get, depending on the date of the occurrence, where we may be working on something and we know something happened prior. These numbers may fluctuate slightly as well, month over month, but not to any great degree. So, but they do change from time to time. So, looking at your clearance rates for your violent property crime and drug crime. Again, you look at property crime, 2019, your clearance rate of 11.1. So that's June to August, you're looking at a 3-month clearance rate. And what I say to that is, we may have had, you look back at your property crime, we may have had 9 theft unders or break-and-enters or mischiefs. We can simply end up with 1 arrest and tie that person back to those 9, and your clearance rate goes from 11% to 80%. Likewise, you could go a stretch of 3 months and it brings it back down.
I think too, clearance rates are, I'm not a fan of them, they really don't show a lot of, there's so many variables. Was it a conviction, we know who did it, or versus can we prove who did it? That's why I kind of go back to the trend analysis, right? If you consistently can show a trend, trending down or trending up, that's a better indicator, quite honestly, in my view, as to, you know, which direction you need to go, and work with and work towards your goal, right?
Well, the clear, and we've found that the clearance rates are so not monthly.
That's right.
Because
exactly.
you could have a crime that happens in July,
It
that
in
gets
December.
cleared in December, and July is clearance rate 0, and December's is
That's right.
150, so,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
it's
So-
not
Absolutely.
as accurate as you'd like to
Yeah.
see it.
And that would have been the same with Wyndham PD,
Absolutely,
everything,
yeah,
it's the same
absolutely.
thing, right? Everybody's, that's a challenge.
So obviously, the longer span, the better the accuracy over in an overarching picture, but as we said, fluctuation. So I just wanted to point that out. We probably move right on to the next page where we have our traffic stats. And again, I simply incorporated this because this is the standardized package that you would see with other PSBs. So, and I did note the 2018 stats are pre-OPP contract, but nothing, no great numbers. Traffic complaints, your reportable and non-reportable motor vehicle collisions. You're at a total of 11 combined. 1 impaired over 80 for the duration of those 3 months. And then the second part to that portion there is the media releases. And for the purpose of this, I've added some that are not specific to Wingham, but they're overarching and they have some significance across the board, not just in Huron County, but in policing as a whole. So the first one is the annual torch run. Good news story to start with. Russ Nesbitt, again, raising over $10,000 for the cause. He's been at it many years, and you'll see further on there's some photos in there as well with regards to that event. Kudos to Russ. He puts on a good event. It's a 12-month commitment on his behalf, but at the end of the day, when you see all these guys get together, guys and girls get together, there's nothing but smiles on their faces. So they wrap it up with a barbecue, and they're all very excited for the cause, and what Russ does with them is very remarkable. So the next one I wanted to include in there was a large seizure of cash and fentanyl. So this is actually Exeter, but we are seeing fentanyl along with methamphetamine locally. It's a problem that we are not, we're not immune to. That's exactly the word I'm looking for. So it's across the board. Some people think it's a big city problem. It's not. These things are getting shipped out into our areas. They're getting distributed, and we're actively working on those.
And just on that, for anybody, that the press release that came through from it would have been generated out of Perth, but it was the combined Huron Perth street crimes unit with Looking Gray as well. The 2 kilogram seizure of methamphetamine and Palmerston, which was basically out of the Listowel area, so right here, mushrooms and cash, and that's all originating out of the GTR. So that's a significant seizure for this area, one of the biggest ones according to our drug officers. And that wasn't just going to be able to be in this community and several communities around here, so municipalities.
So to add to that, the inspectors note that the 2 kilograms, you're looking at $200,000 worth of product, plus cash and offense-related properties. I think it was beyond the $250,000 mark, all said and done. And that's in one arrest, one occurrence. So this one, dealing in fentanyl, nearly $21,000 in product itself, and $20,000 in Canadian currency seized. And that's through a traffic stop as well with our community street crime unit. And again, that was down in Exeter. So. Again, this is kind of this is a good news story, but it's unfortunately related to the drug subculture as well. On the next page, you see where officers used naloxone to help save 2 lives. June 18th, and I'll remember this like it was yesterday, they both occurred on the same day. One in the morning, one in the afternoon, and you can see there's a 25-year-old male and an 18-year-old female, 2 separate locations, both overdosing, both resuscitated, if you will, by administering naloxone that our members carry. So we'll try and get the word out there that, you know what, these kits are available. They're at the health unit, they're at drugstores. The main concern is preservation of life. So the Good Samaritan laws out there where others are administering this, and at the end of the day, we want to see people not losing their lives to this drug. But so I spoke about the law enforcement torch run again, over $10,000 raised, and the photos there. One of the things that obviously we do with the OPP and across the province, we have different campaigns, and you can see there the Canada Day Long Weekend wrap up. And this is across the board for Huron County. It just breaks down some of the stats for our issued during that campaign. 78 with speeding, you have a seatbelt charge, distracted driving, 3 liquor-related, 2 stunt driving offenses. So you're at 50 over the limit, and their vehicles are impounded for a week, and they lose their license as well. So that's just some of the good news, proactive work that's going on. The next thing hits home. People are still not locking them up. So Inspector Scott and I were just out front just before this meeting, and there's a black Mustang across the street in front of the barber shop, top down, keys in the ignition. Nobody around. So we had one of our members come up to take a look and keep an eye, and maybe, you know what, and when I was walking the beat, I would have taken those keys and put them in my pocket, and I would have walked down the street and waited for someone to come out and start doing the, where did I put those? And then I'd have that conversation with them. So it's an easy target, it's a crime of opportunity, and unfortunately, a vehicle theft is not just a vehicle theft, because it's related to many other things: drug crime, dangerous driving, all across the gamut, property crimes, right? So if we can harden the target, so to speak, lock the vehicles, take the keys, I know it's convertible, you want to leave your top down, take the keys with you. Take away your valuables, because they are targets that way as well. But if you're looking at the numbers in this, 19 stolen vehicles during June 1st to July 7th, and that's across the county as well. 19 stolen, and further down I think it tells us how many had, and it's across, we're talking cars, motorbikes, all-terrain vehicles, and I think it might be on the next page. 16 out of 19 were left unlocked or not secured in any fashion. So, and nearly all of the stolen vehicles had the keys left in them, just like the one across the street tonight. So, some information there on auto theft protection tips. Again, stuff that we put on the social media, on the internet. We try to get that messaging out as an education piece. Moving on to the next one. Senior scammed out of $8,000. Again, no boundaries with this. This is going on and on. As a matter of fact, in the office the other day, our members are utilizing their work-issued phones for business purpose, and the phone rings and it's a 1-800 number, and the constable says to me, "Staff, who'd be calling me from 1-800? And I said, "You know what it's probably going to be is the Canada Revenue Agency saying you have a warrant out for your arrest." And he put it on speakerphone. It was the automated the phishing, trying to get people in, and right to a work phone. So nobody's immune. I'm sure you've probably got them at home. I know I've gotten them on this phone. So it's just an auto dialer, and we need to continue with the education to prevent people from losing their money. I won't go into too much detail, but the messaging went out obviously back to school. We all know that the kids have been back, and I'm sure they're all happy to be there. I know I'm happy my daughter's back. Anyways, we've got an impaired driver arrested after a traffic complaint. that was here in Wingham, so we do appreciate the calls. Obviously, the eyes and ears for us are the public as well, so we encourage that. A lot of the times we'll speak to the public. Sometimes they don't want to get involved, sometimes they don't know who to call, how to get a hold of us. So again, education piece. If they see something that is not right or doesn't fit, by all means call us. There's 911 for emergencies, the 1-888 number for non-emergent calls for service that go straight to dispatch and we could have an officer around the corner. So again, we ask that they help us, help everybody and prevent crime, so. And another one just in there for information purposes, an extortion scam as well. So they try all facets from revenue agency to, we've taken control of your computer, we have probably photos of you that you don't want spread, it goes on and the list goes on and on. So that finishes up the media portion. I won't go through the calls for service billing summary report. Obviously some have seen it, some have not. But I put that in there, and I will continue to put that in there unless anybody has any questions about that. I know myself or the inspector can clarify. But. So the last piece then would be the total hours provided and based on the contract hours and the occurrence count. So you can see where the numbers for total hours provided for June, July, and August. You've gone 916 for June, 842 for July, and 882 for August. So then your numbers to the right of that are simply counting down based on your 9,919 total. Just a simple, looking at your total divided by 12 months, you're looking at 826 hours per month. So anything beyond that is over and above, and I see, and it does fluctuate. You're not alone there. It'll go up, it'll go down. And then the very last column, I've kind of combined the two from the previous report. So just your occurrence count, and you can see where June, July, and August, you're 104, 104, and 91. So again, fluctuates by month, the weather, all kinds of.
Whether it's cleared, so these are just general, like it's not hard and fast.
Exactly.
It's just a nice measurement because until things get reconciled at the end of any cycle, then that's when they get tightened up, so.
Yeah, the occurrence count's a good one. Like, the North Huron Police Services Board pre-OPP would have done an occurrence count. It's kind of nice just to see where we were at as opposed to what's going on overall in the town. I would say that we're not the occurrence count from pre to OPP has not drastically went up or drastically went down. It's basically where it has been in the past. So that tells me the level of service is relatively where we need to be based on what occurrences we've had. And a couple of occurrences that have happened and media releases that have happened and the conversation that I'd like to have with like taxpayers when we were going through this process about what level of service are we getting. Well, there was a couple of incidents that have happened, a stabbing, those types of things that were happened and were dealt with the same day.
Absolutely.
And the concern from back when the transition was happening was, well, what happens if the officer's in Goderich? Well, yeah, okay. Well, what happens if that officer's in Wingham? And that's the same, that could have happened post or pre-OPP as well. Because they could have been called out to an OPP area and something happened after the fact. So, it's all about education, about what the level of service is, how they see it, and I think it's going to continue just with that discussion about, what are the occurrence levels, if they're seeing people, what are the top things that we're working on. Those are the kinds of things, if we can get that information out there to the taxpayer and to the people of Wingham and North Huron, I think this unsettling behavior of where are the police is gonna go away, because if you call, they will come. You have to call in order for them to come.
Yeah, I think it's important too, and I've talked to Dave about this, and again, I know that, that it's been practiced to put all the press releases in here. I'm gonna ask, does anybody get the media releases from us? like this.
I used to, but all of a
On
sudden.
a
I don't-
subscription?
Yeah, but I don't
Yeah.
get them anymore.
And that's, for whatever reason, corporate decided to take, unless you're a bona fide media person. So what I've done in Perth County, and we're starting it now, is we'll put the CEO and the PSB chair, or just the PSB chair, whoever, on that distribution list from media, and you'll get most of them, because sometimes our media officers will change just because of coverage. But you should get the majority of press releases coming through, and then you can distribute them to your boards, your council, whatever, because it's all public. And then by doing that, we could probably take a lot of this out of the report. And I'm gonna have discussions with Dave, but we had a challenge, again, I've had this challenge at two previous detachments, is how do we show the proactive efforts that we're giving the communities, right? It's great to say, you're getting 800 hours of police service, okay, is that all, people are calling you, people are, in crisis all the time, and this is why we're coming. So, I'd like to see what the numbers would be when we look at things like some foot patrol, and it may be off the charts, it may be a zero right now, I don't know, I haven't been here long enough, I'm trying to wrap my head around everything. Things like focus patrols, where if you have a bad intersection in town, right now, we really don't have a formal one going, but all the schools are focus patrols, officers are expected to be in around the schools for the next several weeks. If we have any long-term sort of issues, high collision intersections, probably not so much in Wingham, but certainly, we have some prolific ones out in the counties, right? Where we have high collisions, so looking at that, our community mobilization, mental health, that's usually, we have Joanna, here and Bill DeConick, who will soon be kind of interchangeable, because we're looking to move forward on a mobile crisis that will hopefully work along with, and I'm anxious to learn what the, mental health strategy is here in Wingham, I understand that's moving forward, I think Joanna's coming up to have a meeting as well, so that's all great. So what type of work are they doing? And one of the things that we did in Perth, and it showed very effective, is that every community has a prolific person or persons that are always in crisis, are always being called, and just socking up the police and EMS or whoever's time. So an officer that we have in Bill DeConick, maybe you know him, he goes out and he's, what's up? And it could be a medication issue, he hooks them up with services, and for a time period, it drops down because the person's good. But then when they fall into a crisis again, and so we're trying to get that so that now we can get them to the appropriate agency. It's better for us as the police, delivers better service, and that person is with the right people. So, and some of our auxiliary hours, right? That's volunteer hours that are paid with awesome auxiliary units. So some of those things that I think it's nice to see that it's quick and a hit to say, these are some of the good things, like the proactive efforts that are coming out of these hours. So I'm gonna explore that, and if we can get you all on the distribution list, we'll just kind of put noteworthy occurrences, some quick hits that we have. You may be familiar with it through media, and sort of streamline it a little bit, if that's okay. So,
Yeah, and I think with that, Wendy supported the municipality in the grant application
Yes.
for, that obviously the board, I haven't actually seen that we've actually been successful in that grant as of yet, but anyway, that's beside the point.
is that the community safety one?
That is, I think it was.
Yes.
It wasn't the RIDE grant, it was the other grant that was just before the RIDE. But the intention, I think, from that grant was, there was a lot of emphasis on mental health. There was lots of emphasis on mental health in that report. So, I think from our perspective, we're hoping to see some trends of that report, how that funding or that grant money was going to be utilized in order to support, mental health and help us support these same initiatives that the OPB as a whole are looking to support, because they're being proactive as it relates to reactive to these incidences.
I don't think, in fairness, because we had to do a quick tweak in Perth, I don't think we've got the answer back on those specific grants either in Perth County.
Yeah,
So I think I know they're in there.
Carson?
Yeah, so that's the, when you're talking about the community safety and policing grant.
Yeah.
And we haven't received anything on our end.
No.
I think
And
it's still.
we inquired with them and
They'll get that.
there's nothing yet, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, now I think you had mentioned, or Dave and I had discussions perhaps based on an email, Trevor, about the ride grants.
Yes,
What we usually do on those is we will, it's standard practice pretty much across the province, or at least the attachment side, where I've worked in quite a few, is we'll have those hours,
Mhm.
and then we'll divide it up, usually 4 to 6 hours, and we'll assign those, and we'll just go out throughout the year, trying to look at things like, you know, the Super Bowl on, or what, you know, just when's the best time to do these things? Is there a community event, like a fall fair, anything like, as long as we can fill them, and then at the end of the year, we're pretty good with somebody assigned to do that, and normally we're pretty good, if not, then maybe a small portion goes back, but we try our best, and then you'll get the report, because we have to report back to, we usually do that for you.
yes.
I don't know if you had that before with.
Yeah, the police chief usually did the report, and then
Yeah.
he would send it to me, and I would review it, and then I would.
So similar
basically-
process then?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good, so.
The only other question that I had that actually came up at the municipality level that they had asked the board or asked myself to ask you about is, the municipality, as it relates to the Cannabis Act, was granted $10,000 to reduce whatever you had, whatever cost you had as it relates to the cannabis legislation. The municipality did not, we're not an elected, like, we're not getting any more money than that, so we're not supportive in that. So the question though was from our treasurer was, what are we doing with that money? And I'm like, so the question that is, I guess to maybe to you, Rob, and you, David, and even the board, is to, maybe we need to go back and think about, you know, what do we want to use this money for? Maybe we want to use it for something to do with mental health or whatever. I don't know. I think we just need to understand from that perspective, because the municipality's got the money. They just need to know how to, what are we gonna use it for, so that they can make sure and allot it, so that they're not going ahead and spending it on something else, and make sure. So I don't know if by next meeting we can have some kind of thought between the board and yourselves as to what that will be. And then we can at least have a discussion with the treasurer to say, we've got a game plan, or at least something.
So that was for like a crime prevention funding?
Yeah, that was the money that the government provided municipalities to offset their costs as it relates to the legalization of cannabis. Whether it was putting in bylaws or policing issues, but because we're not going to have any stores, because we are not a host, we've actually put that legislation in, that we haven't had really anything, any real bylaws or any change in the law. We're just using the provincial and federal laws as it relates today.
Mhm.
So we don't know anything so that $10,000 that the municipality has, nobody really knows what we should be using it for.
How long do we have to spend that?
So the specific fund itself is the Ontario Cannabis Legalization Implementation Fund. And so every municipality got $10,000 to offset unpredicted costs related to the legalization of cannabis. And then the ones that opt in, they receive extra money after that. So there's no real parameters as to what the money is to be spent on.
And there's no real parameters on when it's to be spent.
Okay. So just off the top of my head, I'm thinking it's, what I think would be important to the community, and you know your community better than I do at this juncture, is certainly look to, okay, are you getting complaints right now in relation to cannabis? That's number one. You know, two, what type of education, like signage, all these sort of proactive efforts. To take 10,000 and turn it into an enforcement piece, I don't know. Maybe that would offset some type of bylaw, a summer student, or something to, you know, like is it our kids going off school to smoke and vape? Maybe you could stretch it into the vaping side of it too, because that's big right now, right? Especially with the young people. So I think if you look, and we can engage with like Joanna, our mobilization officer. Certainly if we look to addictions, what would addictions be up here, Dave? Maybe they would have some ideas. Some of our choices for change,
I think
all
you're right,
these,
yeah.
all these groups, and maybe, and look to see where we could best provide advice and whatever ideas, maybe council or somebody would have to look to. Where, what do you wanna see, like signage in the town? Like people want signs all over, but, certainly into the schools, like literature, something that you could support a program. There's a lot of things that you could do with that money, and if you don't have to do it all at once, that would probably be it, because then if it's an education program, it can be a little sustainable, right? To see, and certainly, Jody Baker with the Board of Ed, we're still on Maitland, right? Yeah, so we can engage with her, the school boards, like mental health, and look to see what would be a good use for this, right? But it would have to be, driven by the municipality. Like,
Absolutely.
we can't drive it, but we can certainly provide some guidance. And
Yeah, I think the intention from the treasurer was to kind of start the discussion
Yeah.
about where do we think that we could start the discussion about how to implement something, and then know that the money's there, available, so when we have these discussions with the board or the Avon Maitland or whoever, that whatever plan we want, and again, it's the board, I'm just bringing all this up today for the board, they can go back and think about it as well, and we can come back with council's information to the board and say, here's what we've collectively discussed, here's what we think we can go for, and then kind of help with your guys' help, kind of start the process, and then we can kind of implement something and provide funds accordingly. We're gonna have them, so we have them, we just need to know how to utilize them.
The one thing I might add to that, and I just get this through my daughter who's 10, but there's kids her age and younger that will never know a time when marijuana was illegal, right? And what the associated effects and problems are with use. So some of the things that they're doing as well are education-based, where they're coming up with, make a poster, write an essay. For the younger kids, posters, usually artwork, stuff like that, where it's supported by the community, and you know what I mean? So another aspect where I think that target audience moving forward are the ones that have to have a great realization that there's still, you know what, just because it's made legal doesn't mean there's no ill effects, right? So just another piece for thought.
And that's what I think, like, with Choices for Change, and they work with our high school officers and that all the time. And that's one thing where, you just don't tell kids, don't do this anymore. Here's what happens, here's this, here's that. It's not the war on drugs anymore, right?
Yeah.
So, looking, if I look at something, maybe in your local community centers or wherever place, maybe you invest in a monitor that you can put key messaging up. Not just for that, perhaps other things. Run a contest amongst school kids, like Dave said. We did that for a anti-theft campaign. The municipality sponsored it through local insurance to look at reducing auto theft, and the kids actually bought in. And there were some substantial awards, like $500 to get the kids engaged, and that's gonna be put up in the, the arenas and stuff like that. Take your keys out of your car, right? So that gets that engagement. So I think there's a lot of, we just gotta get the right partners. My suggestion is you try to keep it as small as you can, so that you kind of get really focused. What do you want to focus on? Youth in this, with addiction, like, so your Choices for Change, school, mobilization stuff. And then, but if you get too many people at the table, it'll just, so I'll leave it with you guys.
Is there any other comments from board members about that discussion?
So we don't have to justify or report how they use the fund?
There is no reporting that we're aware of, that I've been indicated from a council perspective or anybody. The government was handing out money for the legalization of cannabis, and that was kind of the end all. And you either got to have the discussion, and then if you opted in, you could potentially get more, but if you opted out, you could only get to the maximum of $10,000.
Here's the other thing, if you have similar municipalities that you know through your municipal network that got the similar thing and they're in a similar situation,
Yeah.
reach out and see what they did as well.
Okay.
Because that's always a good a good option.
Yeah, so so what I'll do is I'll communicate back to a council and to the treasurer about maybe getting the municipal network, figuring out what other municipalities have been doing. Council or board members can think about it over the next month, and then we'll kind of reconvene about what we think, and then we'll make a motion as it relates to what we think the 10,000 should be utilized for, and then provide direction. Carson?
So whether this, if you're gonna consider ideas, this might be helpful, but basically it says, on the website that, municipalities must use the OCLIF funding to address the implementation costs that directly relate to the legalization of recreational cannabis. Examples of permitted costs include increased enforcement, such as police, public health, and bylaw enforcement, increased response to public inquiries, such as 311 calls, increased paramedic services, increased fire services, and bylaw and policy development. So those are what they have for examples of where you could invest the money.
My suggestion is to leverage health, and health can branch out into education, that'd be just, without getting to the minutia,
Yeah.
that'd be, make you, I think, get right back on track here.
Yeah.
Because health is huge, right?
Yeah.
Health is a great partnership.
Okay, so does that seem like a good plan to do? Okay. So if there's anything else, that was just questions and kind of nice dialogue as we were going through the report, so it was nice to have that dialogue, so, do I have a board member to accept the, detachment commander's report
Just
as,
if I may,
oh, sorry,
Mr. Chair,
Mark.
sorry. One thing I'd like to add is that quite often, I know this is a later meeting, but we may be able to do it. If there's any type of presentation, like if you've never met a media officer, or as we move forward, like a school resource officer, or even a member of our drug unit or something, to come in and give a quick, brief 5-minute, you know, if there's not a big delegation list or anything. And we'd certainly be willing to do that to, you know, you just have to let me know if there's something, we could bring a subject matter expert in to, same as we did with Municipal Policing Bureau, but if there was something else that, we could do with our mobilization officer, like Joanna could probably give you a great overview of what we're doing from the mental health perspective, and then you could take that back to council. And so you just let us know, through Dave, and we'll see if we can arrange it, if the scheduling works out or something like that.
Yep, so board members, if you have, you know when the board meetings are happening, so my suggestion would be that we have a meeting once a month. I would suggest that we give, you know, the OPP at least 2 weeks to let them, if we want somebody, then let's get them, know them 2 weeks before the actual agenda would go out, and then if we can confirm, great, if we can't, then we'll do it so that we can do it the next meeting. So,
And it may fall through, but at least if we try to do it.
yep,
You'll get somebody, quite often too, if we get officers new, especially, it's a big county, right? But, often if we get out officers that are, probably we're gonna assign to the area, as a patrol zone or something, then we'll have them, you know, come and, you know, meet the board sometimes if we can.
And
Especially if they're new to policing.
yeah, and if we have the opportunity to have, but they need an earlier meeting,
Okay.
there is the possibility that we could adjust the meeting time accordingly as long as we give proper notice. So I think if we can work together like that, I think that would be more than fine. Okay, so I'll take a motion to accept the detachment commander's report as presented. Kathy moves that, and Rick seconds it. Okay, lots of discussion, which is good. All those in favor? Carried. So the dry part of this is, and not really for more for the OPP people that are here, but this is the details of the bills and accounts that we still have as it relates to the board and the running of the service. So, is there any questions as it relates to the bills and accounts that were presented to the board?
Just curious, we're still paying RICO, which I think is a photocopier, correct, or? Is that the contract for the photocopier?
So my understanding is that that one is the penalty to end the contract with the copier.
And then Intel was for the two internets, are we still paying that
That should be the final billing for that.
for?
So here until, waived the cancellation fee for us to cancel we were in a 3-year contract, and they waived the fee to cancel both the internet and phone lines. So that was about a $2,000 savings to the budget that could have happened if here until really wanted to be business-like. So, but at the end of the day, I think we shouldn't see any other costs associated to operating. Obviously, we're still gonna see a dispatch bill for the Old Sound Police Service. Hopefully next month will be the last one, and we won't see anything like that. We do have some stuff to talk about in closed about that we need to deal with, but as it relates to the finalization of the transition, so, but other than that, there should not be a lot of bills that are going on at this point. So, if there is no questions, I take a motion to authorize and approve the payments of the bills and accounts of the amount of $6,739.54. Kathy moves those and Rick seconds them. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so bylaws, so we've approved the RIDE grant, submission. However, we need to provide a bylaw as it relates to authorizing the chair and me to the agreement with the Ministry of Solicitor General. So bylaw 02/2019, being a bylaw to authorize the chair to sign on behalf of the North Huron Police Service Board a reduced impaired driving everywhere grant allocation agreement with the Ministry of Solicitor General be introduced, read first, second, and third, and final time, signed by the chair and secretary, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover for that? Rick moves that. Jim seconds it. Is there any questions with regards to the bylaw or the agreement? But as we discussed, the template or the reporting template will provide, I actually believe I sent that to Wendy back when it came, but I can resend it to Dave, you,
Yes.
and then just to make sure that whatever I got as it relates to the template, I'll send it to you guys to make sure you have it.
So do
Okay.
we get that, is that money there now, is the grant there now? Like,
We've got the agreement, which then I think they've provided the funds, Carson, or we're waiting for this agreement to be signed before they issue them?
So the agreement has been signed, so I'd have to ask Donna, but.
Pretty sure we probably have the money, I'm guessing, but we can confirm that. We'll confirm with the treasurer and we'll let
so
you
that
know.
we can start doing.
That's correct.
maybe,
I'll
yes,
let,
if you look into that.
so I'll let the treasurer advise when we've received the grant money, and if we have, then I'll let Dave and yourself know that it's available.
Perfect.
Okay? All those in favor? Carried. So the correspondence, so these correspondence was 9.1, 9.1, 9.2, and, 9.3, which the 9.3 is the same report that Dave provided to us in his report under the detachment commander's report. But 9.1 and 9.2, actually, these were resolutions that were at the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police that the past chief thought it would be important that the board see these. I don't know if they have, what impact, if the council or if the board has seen a lot of these before, or what the response to them is. So if there is, does anybody have any discussion about the correspondence, or are we okay to just order, read, and file? I'm not seeing any discussion, so is there a mover to have the correspondence ordered, read, and filed? Rick moves it. Do I have a seconder? Kathy seconds it. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so we've got new business, which, so in new business, we should, so basically, this is just a reminder that, and it's more a reminder for me, rather than all the board, is if there's anything under new business, we should make sure that it's on the agenda so that Carson can put it on the agenda under new business as it relates to any discussion, so that we're being transparent as it relates to the meeting and making sure we're keeping on track, so, okay? Public comment, no public here, so we do have a closed session and reporting out, so the North Huron Police Services Board are hereby going to proceed at 8:05 to an in-camera session closed to the public pursuant to section 35(4) of the Police Services Act to discuss the matters that fall under intimate financial and personnel matters or other matters of such nature having regard to the circumstances that the desirability of avoiding their disclosure in the interest of any person affected or in the public interest outweighs the desirability of adhering to the principle that precedes the opening to the public. Tell me that's not legalese.
Stuff
Why?
the public doesn't need to know.
That's right, basically that's what it says. Is there a mover for that? Rick moves it. Do I have a seconder? Kathy seconds. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll give 2 seconds here while Carson changes the. Okay, so from the reporting out, there was a discussion in closed as regards to transferable information in regards to the pension shortfalls, regards to the transition of the Wingham Police Service to the OPP. The direction, I'll take a mover to provide staff direction as indicated in closed. Jim moves that, Rick seconds it. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so basically, the next meeting has been discussed, that the OPP are gonna get back to us in regards to some new dates, obviously, because there's a conflict in regards to October the 15th. Obviously, with the information that we have, we'll be probably providing some direction about a special meeting that needs to take place. Me and Carson will be in touch with the board to ensure that we can get the stuff documented and communicated. Other than that, I did want to mention that there is a Zone 5 meeting scheduled on December the 10th. It's in Orangeville. So if there is availability to go to that, let me know. Let me or Carson know. And then I'd like, because I don't know that we've had anybody at NS Zone 5 for a few of them. So if we can get somebody, it's hard for me, obviously, I'm out of town, so I can't always get out, but if there is somebody availability, then we can.
December 5th?
It's December the 10th,
Or December
it's a
10th.
Tuesday.
Those are held during the day?
It's 9, usually it starts at 9 and it's done by 1. You're usually back in town here by 2 o'clock.
But it's in Orangeville.
It's in Orangeville, so
Have they got the regs rolled up yet?
I don't think so. So, anyway, I don't think, if there's any questions about that, then feel free to let me know, but I just wanted to let the board know that that is some communication we did get, so I wanted to pass on that to the board. Okay? So we'll take a motion to adjourn
Before
at,
we adjourn,
sorry.
we have to talk about the October 15th meeting.
the OPP are gonna provide us info dates, and I'm gonna pass them on to the board.
But I would prefer that we don't go any earlier than 7 on it, if it's a Tuesday night if possible.
That's fine. We can, if it doesn't work for what we have, it doesn't have to be a Tuesday.
No.
We can move it on any day we want, we just have to provide notice. So, we'll advise the OPP of that as well, and let them, one of them can be here, if both of them can't, so be it. We just need to make sure we provide and notice, proper notice. But if you as board members can't work it, that word, just let me know, we'll reschedule something that works for all of us.
Because the first Tuesday, and the second last Tuesday, conflicts with the regional.
Right.
In my case.
Yeah, so we'll, if it doesn't have to be a Tuesday, we can work around it.
And I don't think it would be a bad idea because they offered that maybe for the next few months that we regularly did schedule someone to come with them, someone different to come with them each time, so that we do get to meet, like the communications officer or the mental health officer.
Person.
So basically with that, if there's someone of interest to the board, I would recommend letting me know and I can communicate with Dave and Rob, and basically we can treat it as a second delegation, right?
Yeah,
Where they could come in and they can make a presentation just like any other delegation to the board would.
yeah, and then just maybe ask them to do that every meeting for the next 3 or 4 meetings until we get through the personnel they would like us to meet.
So what I'll do is, if that's the case, then just, I'll send a message to Dave, just kind of indicating what are the kind of the sections that you were talking about that you could offer as some oversight to us to come do a presentation to us. And I'll let them kind of decide, and then I'll send it off to you guys and decide which ones you want to see first. And then we'll go from
I
there.
don't think it really matters to me because as long it works with their schedule, maybe the one can, one can't, it's just as long as we just schedule one of them, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay. Well, me and Carson will communicate with Dave about those instances of bringing somebody extra to discuss what's going on at the OPP, communications, mental health, those type of things. Okay, that there being no further business, North Huron Police Service Board meeting hereby adjourns at 8:50. Do I have a mover? Rick? Seconder is Kathy. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, board. It's not always easy.